They are the least affected age group, yet the only ones still mandated to wear masks at this point. We have sports stadiums all around the country filled to capacity almost nightly with very few wearing masks. Why is that okay, yet 20 children in a classroom are forced to wear them? Next, the latest guidance from the CDC states that cloth masks have no effect on the spread of a virus. Most children wear cloth masks, so unless you will provide N95 masks, it's all just for show. The mask rules for restaurants shows the absurdity in it all. Wear a mask until you're seated, then you can remove it. Really? You are safe at 4 feet, but not at 6 feet? If that's the case, why weren't our children allowed to remove their mask while sitting at their desks? Other cities and towns in Rhode Island have adopted a parental choice approach, including North Smithfield next door. So in closing, I want to thank those who vote for choice tonight, and anyone who votes for mandatory masks should be ashamed of yourselves. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to address the school committee?
Good evening. My name is John Lynch. I don't have a speech to tell you guys. I don't have much to say. I'm a Woonsocket business owner. I do business with some of you on the board. I have twin 5-year-olds. I go to Glow Park School. And they don't like the mask like no other kid likes the mask. Now, the CDC has lowered the level of words, the amount of words a kindergartner now has to learn. Is that okay with you guys? Lower our kids' education for a mask? It's not. Kids need to see facial recognition. They need to see words. They need to see 40. They need to see 30. They need to see the, there, when, why. They need to see the lips. They need to see why this works the way it does. It doesn't work this way. My kids are in kindergarten. All I know is this. So when they come home and they don't know the difference between B as in boy and D as in dog, because they can't see. They're not getting educated properly on what the teachers are trying to teach them. All our kids are taught on facial recognition, sounds, and pronunciations. When you cover your mouth, these kids don't know any better. They're going off sound and trying to mimic what you're doing. It's not right. How many of you guys here have a kindergarten or a first grader in school right now? Do you have a kindergarten or a first grader in school where the learning of the words and numbers and speech is the most crucial for these kids to learn? You guys don't have that. I can't speak for second, third, fourth, fifth graders and so forth. I can speak for my twin boys who have trouble speaking. The mask is dirty, they sneeze, snots, coughing, choking, and it comes home black. I'm asking for a choice. If I want to send my kid to school with no mask, and Joe Schmo wants to send their kid with a mask, so be it. It's unhealthy. You guys don't experiment what these parents are experimenting of the kids that are in kindergarten and first grade. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
My name is Jason Hilton. I live here in Woonsocket. I also have a first grader. And just to echo what John was saying, on top of the what he was speaking about with the development, there's also a social development interaction with other kids that these children are lacking. And that's what I'm concerned mostly about sending my kid to school, is to make friends. I want him to go to school and see other kids and play with other kids and interact with other kids. And I think it's a perfect opportunity, seeing that there's virtually no risk of death with these kids. Why not? We all know how immune systems are built. Let's take advantage of this. Why not give them the best opportunity to fight this in the future as adults? I don't know, it seems like a good idea. That's not the popular idea, but wait, I don't know. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
My name is Jennifer Hilton. I also have 2 kids in school. One of them is a kindergartner, and also my other one is in daycare. My daycare child, who is 4, 1 year younger than my 5-year-old, obviously, does not have to wear a mask because he is in daycare. My 5-year-old does. I have noticed that recently, my 5-year-old is struggling with behavioral issues in class. He does not struggle with that at home because we are able to have that facial expression when we are talking to each other. The only time, like I had said, he misbehaves is when he is in school. He is having trouble focusing on what the teacher is saying. He's having trouble focusing on what other kids are talking about. He doesn't know how to communicate with other kids except for growling and mumbling because of what he's hearing with the masks that are on their face. So I'm hoping that those who are in favor of keeping this choice, that you guys stay that way, because I don't want this to go on any further. And if I can help my son become better and not have to prolong this and keep this going, then I'm going to. So please, if you can vote this pro-choice, I will not be sending my kid to school with a mask.
Good evening. My name is Bernard Hilton. Clearly the parents of these 2 young people here who I've sent through the Woonsocket school system from kindergarten to graduation, as well as my other daughter. So I have 3 children who went through this school system from kindergarten to graduation. 5 of my 6 grandchildren live in Woonsocket, who will presumably be going through this school system. I can't express enough that this, I'm going to try to remain calm, but if masks work and it's by choice, then the people who are wearing the masks are protected, are they not? Clearly, you don't answer questions, okay? But we are going into year 3 of flattening the curve. You do remember that, right? Almost 2+ years ago, into year 3 now, we were going to wear masks to flatten the curve for 14 days. 14 days, year 3. I agree with all of the comments that were made before me. Children do need to see phonics. They need to see how to pronounce an F. They need to how to pronounce TH. You're hurting our children. You're hurting my grandchildren. I'm asking you to make this pro-choice. This is up to parents. This is up to parents to decide whether or not they want their kids to wear a mask. If the parents who decide that their children should wear a mask, then they're protected. The parents who do not, then again, that's their choice. 5 of my 6 grandchildren are going to go through the school system. Enough is enough. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the school committee?
Jeffrey Duran, 94 Highland Street. Just going to be gathering my thoughts. This is my second time being here. First time around, I believe it was August last year, maybe September, where I remained hopeful at the time that the data that was unfolding was, for instance, looking at states or municipalities where masks and whatnot or mandates weren't in place, we'd have some sort of ability to compare whether or not a school system like ours that mandated and a school system like, I don't know, somewhere in Florida didn't, we'd be able to look at that data and be able to make some sort of conclusions, particularly if we saw that the Florida school did not have several orders of magnitude removed from ours in terms of cases, hospitalizations, so on and so forth. I was optimistic in August and September that we could look at that data and realize that no matter what we did with this virus, very few mitigation strategies, particularly the masks, and now the vaccines are having an impact as we've just gotten out of the Omicron, upswing, and really nothing we threw at this thing made a difference. And we're actually quite fortunate that it was more on the benign side. Hopefully, people can look at that the current data and go, okay, this swept through. We should be able to start returning to normal at this point. But let me say that I don't expect to change any minds here. I think that as a country, as a state of Rhode Island, city of Woonsocket, when I look around, everybody's opinion on this is very, very hardened at this point. I don't expect to, again, win anybody over. I know there's at least one of you on this school committee who feels as though indefinite masks and in the future probably mandatory vaccinations are good policy. I'm, again, not expecting to change your mind. You are definitely going to stand your ground. I'm standing mine at this point. And to that effect, what I came here to say today is that, and I wanted to be strong for the community of people behind me who fight like hell for our rights, but I feel defeated. I feel defeated as a citizen of this country, the state, the city. I feel defeated more than anything as a father. And that defeat comes from when I ask my son the simple question, what is your opinion of the mask? He tells me it suffocates him. And I have to send him to school every day with a mask that he claims suffocates him. I know that he's not choking to death, but when you have your flesh and blood look you in the eye and they give you an honest answer as only a 7-year-old can, and you feel helpless. And I think that, again, if I can't change your mind, I just want you to know we feel helpless, we feel hurt. And whether it's this topic or other hot topics of the day, when we express our need for freedom and choice, and we're met with anger and hostility, and we're called even terrorists, it's very disheartening, and it feels like nothing we even want out of policy making is ever going to go our way again. Even looking up north to the Canadian trucker movement, Justin Trudeau wouldn't even hear them speak. So we do understand that you think we're stupid and reckless and all those things if you stand on the side of continuing these policies. I will just tell you that I've been called stupid because I don't have a doctorate in any medical field. I'm a wedding DJ. And when people on the other side of the fence on this issue use that against me, I often remind them that in 2020, I lost $80,000 of income. I can't buy a house right now because a loan officer won't give me the ability to use that year as a portion of my income. But I'm an expert on this. I'm an expert on this because I spend about 6 hours a day reading about how we can get out of this and what data might exist in the corners of the internet that doesn't get hidden by little Facebook messages and Twitter bots and mainstream media, of course. I feel defeated, and I wanted to remind you guys of all that today, and I hope that we get a small victory today in removing the mask policy as a matter of force rather than parental choice. I'll remind the committee today that I was one of the first parents to pull my kid out of school in March of 2020 in this entire state, likely. At the time, the data that was presented to me was insufficient to make any other decision other than I should pull him out of school until I know what's going on. We've had the data. And again, I say you look to countries like Sweden or states like Florida, and it is apparent that there is no significant or meaningful difference between those of us who did things the way we did here in Woonsocket and them. So I'm tired of feeling defeated. Even if we win today, and it will be a win if we remove these mandates, I'm still going to be heartbroken for the years of development that have been stunted for an entire generation of kids, most profoundly in the youngest, but I think the data will reveal itself someday in the future to say that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, and even on a social level for the high school students who were unable to go to prom, unable to have meaningful social interactions in some of the best years of their lives. I know that here in Woonsocket, the best years of my life were certainly in high school and middle school. Again, I don't expect to change any minds today, but we've done things, if you are in disagreement with me, we've done things your way for 700 days now. It is, we've been a frog in a frying pan. We haven't gotten angry or thrown things or taken temper tantrums or really even galvanized the full support of every parent I know who's against these sort of things, because we keep thinking that you're going to see how fruitless these endeavors are if only unless they're fruitful for political purposes. And nothing has been more apparent in the last month as I saw Boston, Chicago, DC, LA, all these places just suddenly rip the masks off, so to speak, the minute they realized that the 2022 midterm elections were not going to be favorable to the Democratic Party. I was once a member of that party, a proud member of that party. I leave that party behind today because I see that on this exact issue, they have so lost their way. So I'm asking the members of this board to please put partisan politics behind as we try to give our kids a somewhat brighter future. We certainly understand that COVID is a threat. We certainly understand that it has affected a lot of families in this community, but we will no longer sit here and understand why we are doing things that have not had a measurable impact at the detriment of our children. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the school committee?
Mark Lebrun, 44 Maria Ann Court in Woonsocket. I'm also the Dean of Students at this school. Dr. McGee made a side deal with me and said he would give me a nickel for every time I asked the kid to put his mask up. Not really, just kidding. I'm here with a different point of view. You guys have discussed this, you've figured it out, you know what you're going to do. I will just tell you, thank you for taking on the unenviable task of keeping our kids safe. We lost a secretary in the school early on due to COVID, and that sticks in my head every day. One kid would be too much. I think it's time to probably get rid of masks. But you guys are the guys that are going to have to pay the price should something really bad happen. So thank you for taking care of the kids.
Anyone else that would like to address the school committee?
How you doing? Jared Moylan, 151 Elmore Avenue. I have two school-age children who have been homeschooled since the start of this virus. Because of so many uncertainties, I would love to see them enjoy their elementary school years in a classroom and socializing with classmates. Not knowing the threat that this virus would give us at the beginning stage, we did everything we knew to keep them safe. And thankfully, as time went on, data showed minimal threat to our kids and still does to this day. So the data speaks for itself. I strongly oppose all the unnecessary mandates and support medical freedom and parental choice. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to address the school committee?
Hi, good evening. I'm Elizabeth Moylan of 151 Elmore Avenue. Again, my husband and I, we chose to homeschool our kids because of the statewide mask mandate and additional COVID policies that include testing and quarantine. I'm respectfully requesting the Woonsocket Education Department end their district-wide mask mandate once the governor's executive order expires on March 4th at 5 p.m. I'd like to bring up the Southwell versus McKee case that the Judge Lamphere, his decision on the court case, he stated, "This court finds that plaintiff's testimony regarding the ongoing impact of the mask mandate on their children suffices to establishing a finding of irreparable harm. Knowing that masking school children is causing irreparable harm, I strongly urge you to end the mask mandate in our district and allow parents and families to decide what is best for their children. I'm also requesting that you stop promoting the liability-free COVID-19 vaccines." So I hope these aren't going to be, I know our numbers are really low, and I hope you don't try to get the numbers up in order to unmask our students like they're doing in Providence. Congress removed all liability from the manufacturers under the PrEP Act. So the COVID-19 vaccines are categorized as a countermeasure. The countermeasure injury compensation program was created so that in the unlikely event that you experience a serious injury from a covered countermeasure, you may be considered for benefits. If you believe you or another person has been seriously injured by a covered countermeasure, you can submit a request for benefits with the CICP on their website, and you have 1 year of receiving the countermeasure to file that. So you have 1 year from the date of the first dose. Are students and parents being given informed consent in this information when they sign up for these experimental shots? Today we know that all of the liability-free COVID-19 vaccines do not prevent infection, they do not prevent transmission, and now they are even losing efficacy on preventing death. RIDO provides breakthrough COVID vaccine data every single Wednesday. So for the last 4 weeks, 90 out of the 129 deaths reported were in the fully vaccinated. Now, you're not considered fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after the final dose. So if you take the Johnson & Johnson, you have to wait till day 14. Pfizer and Moderna, day 14 after the second shot. So that's how they manipulate the data too. Like, why don't we have access to, if you're partially vaccinated, there's no statistics. So they're lumping anybody that's had 1 or 2 shots but it hasn't been 2 weeks in the unvaccinated. So that skews the data too. I'd also like to note that as of February 11th, the passive surveillance system in the United States that captures adverse events following vaccination, VAERS, there's been 23,990 COVID vaccine deaths, 27,305 life-threatening events, and 43,476 cases of permanent disability. And according to the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality Report, adverse events from vaccines are common but underreported, with less than 1% reported. I'd also like to note, again, there's been 0 deaths throughout the state of Rhode Island from COVID under the age of 25. School-age hospitalizations, like children that are school-age for hospitalizations through the state, the ages from 5 through 9, there's been 49. 10 through 14, there's been 85, and 15 through 18, there's been 147, again, resulting in 0 deaths. And then I'd also like to note that Christopher Cole, the FDA Executive Officer of Countermeasures Initiative, was recently on tape, like in an undercover interview, and he's quoted as saying, the drug companies, the food companies, the vaccine companies, they pay us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to hire and keep the reviewers to approve their products. The public has lost all faith in the CDC, the FDA, the Department of Health. We can't trust anything. They're manipulating everything. They're not providing us with correct statistics. And now the cases are dropping. Why? Because they all sent in, here you have your at-home test, you don't have to report it. That's why your cases are dropping. Thank you. Please vote to end everything.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the school committee?
I'm Josh Joseph, resident of Woonsocket. I'm actually talking more to the parents. These people don't care. Get your kids out of the school. Get them out. They don't have to, what if they don't change for years? What are we gonna do? Cry about it? You guys have a different mentality, a whole different set, and actually, that's fine. And I know, we're in a blue state. I just went to Florida. It was awesome. It was awesome, the freedom these people had. I saw people eating with masks on and without. You don't respect choice, parents here, get out of the schools here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Anita McGuire Forcier. I live at 95 Marion Lane, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Hi. I'd like to echo some of the things they said, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be quick up here. She brought up a lot of good points that I have shared with many of you up there, and city council members and state reps who chose or did not choose to research it. We all have free will. Someone sends you information, you got a choice. I'm gonna research it or I'm not. The information I sent were professionals, good professionals that weren't making a penny off of COVID. You guys chose to follow the politicians that are getting money for this pandemic. That is a choice you made as individuals and as grown-ups. You guys have to live with that. Now you're finding out the PCR test is fake. CDC will tell you. It can only find the common cold. That's right. COVID has never been isolated. There's not a test for COVID. This is a fact. Nobody's found it. Many dead bodies autopsied. Nobody has found COVID. PCR test finds the common cold, which we all have dead nucleotides of that in our body. That's a fact. Research it. And this was known over a year ago. However, adults chose, not just you, throughout this state and many other states, to go along with their fake narrative. Children are in danger. Mask those children. Don't let them get near each other. Ridiculous. Shame on each of you. Think about it now. Little innocent children. You masked them, you separated them. You yelled at them when they couldn't breathe and they pulled their mask down. And now, although I respect everybody's choice, optional, I respect that. It's still wrong. There's many parents out there that don't have access to truth, and they are afraid. They really still wash their groceries before bringing them into the home. They will force their children to come to school 6 hours a day and wear a mask and get less than 50% of the oxygen they need to make their brains work. Shame on all of you. Choices, we're the adults. Stand up and protect the children. There's no excuse. And remember, we can go after each of you individually. That's right. You are responsible for this. I sent that out to you guys too. So keep pulling this game. I got a granddaughter coming to school. I won't be quiet. And I'm not going to play along. I get it at the beginning. Everybody was afraid. We didn't know what we were dealing with. But you know what? Before the first year was over, we knew there was a lot of cracks in our stories. Why are you guys wearing masks? If you're at a restaurant, you wouldn't have to wear one. You're sitting down. It's for show. Don't play. Tell the governor where to shove it. Tell him you are grown adults and you're not going to be his puppet. You're going to protect the children in this district. If not, you will be held accountable. Do you understand? I'm not looking for an answer. But let me tell you, we're already finding out the truth about everything. Picture a year or 2 years from now, when you're laying in bed knowing that you participating in abuse, child abuse. That's what it is, pulling oxygen away from a child, having them sit at a desk with 50% of the oxygen they need. That is child abuse. You did it. You abuse children, and there's no way around it. You can lie to yourself, well, I had to. Oh, I needed my paycheck. Oh, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. You made the choice. You're responsible for it. I'm going to end now because I could go on for hours. Thank you all for listening. Have a good night.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the school committee? Next, we'll go into our next item on our agenda, recognitions and announcements. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one announcement to make. On Monday, March 14th, and on Wednesday, May 11th, those are statewide professional development days for teachers and staff. Those days will be DL days, distance learning days for students, and they will have asynchronous instruction, which means that the teachers will put together slide decks, and they will put together Google Classroom assignments and activities for students to use during those 2 days. Teachers and administrators will be sending parents and families more information as we get a little bit closer to that March 14th date. So I just wanted to remind the community of those 2 PD days. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the recognitions and announcements. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, we'll go into the approval of minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the February 9, 2022 closed session minutes. Is there a second? Second. Second by Vice Chair Burke. Any corrections, amendments? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kapiskas. Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the February 9, 2022 open meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any amendments, changes? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kapiskas. Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Vice Chair Burke. Any school committee member want to take any item out of the consent agenda to discuss? I don't see any. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Dr. McGee, I'll ask you to give us your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to start, as I usually do, with personnel. We had one addition from our last school committee meeting to this evening of a full-time social worker at Savoy Elementary School. We also have added 2 teacher assistants and a groundskeeper itinerant to our custodial and maintenance staff here in the district. In addition to that, we have numerous extracurricular stipend positions, most of which are in the area of high dosage tutoring for students. Secondly, the committee and the community may or may not be aware of a $250 million school construction bond, which is a facility equity bond. Last year, it was awarded when the Woonsocket Education Department received approximately $1.6 million, of which we are in the process of planning how to use that money for our construction. This is not the part of the $150 million that we're hoping to procure from the state. This is separate from that. So we are in the process right now of establishing where to spend that money. We're looking at the high school, specifically the science labs, refurbishing the science labs at Woonsocket High School, as well as the auditorium at Woonsocket High School. I want to thank the commissioner. I want to thank the General Assembly and the governor for providing districts with the opportunity to receive these funds. There was actually a ceremony on February 16th, Wednesday the 16th, in which we were basically awarded the funds for the work that we'll be doing at the high school. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. McGee? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Costa and Vice Chair Burke. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, we'll go into the subcommittee report that we have. It's the curriculum update. And I'll ask Mrs. Kepiscus to give us that update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Curriculum Subcommittee met on February 15th at 3 p.m. At the minutes for the prior meeting on January 18th were approved. First, we discussed a discussion of the foreign language curriculum. Dr. Canberra advised us that the license for our foreign language curriculum was expiring, so he began exploring different providers. Essentially, he found two programs, one through National Geographic, who did not return his calls, and another through a company called Vista. He was recommending the subcommittee go forward with the purchase through Vista. It's a new program, state-of-the-art. French and Spanish curriculum are aligned, as in students will be learning the same thing at the same time. The program also aligns to the current ELA curriculum. The program includes cultural instruction as well as skill synthesis.
Then they can't. Mike, is your microphone on? That's the other thing.
I don't know.
I'll be on. Is it on?
I believe it is.
There you go.
It's available in both book and online formats. It's very engaging and high quality. It is not greenlit by Ed Reports, which is the state system to greenlight a curriculum, because foreign language curriculums have not been greenlighted by Ed Reports. The subcommittee agreed it sounded like a good one. It sounds like a good move, especially in light of the proposed new graduation requirements, which we'll get to later in the agenda. Although it's not currently green-lighted, Dr. Holt did believe that this curricula would meet the requirements for the master list for curricula that do get green-lighted by Ed Reports, and she doesn't anticipate a problem with that. We then reviewed the transition classroom performance data. Presentation was by Ms. DeRizo regarding a side-by-side comparison of our 14 grade 1 and 2 transition classrooms across the district, which are designed based upon proven principles of RTI and MTSS, response to intervention and multi-tiered system of supports. Each classroom has 2 certified educators along with other support staff. This is important data as part of our evaluation of the impact of the pandemic on some of our youngest students. The results vary across the district and can be affected by other things, including but not limited to attendance, multiple language learner status, etc. It's promising that our students overall are trending upward towards proficiency at the second evaluation over the first evaluation. Many additional students are achieving proficiency, and others are showing growth, if not proficiency. The presentation was very data-driven. Many of the students who are at the bottom of the graph with least improvement are also going through the RTI MTSS process and therefore are receiving additional supports. The next meeting of the curriculum subcommittee is scheduled for Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 at 3 p.m. here at the Woonsocket Middle School at Hamlet in room 124. The meeting was adjourned at 3:46. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. Any questions for her or me? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the curriculum update. Do we have a second? Second by Vice Chair Burke. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, we'll go into conferences and discussions. I'll ask Mr. Perrier to give us the financial update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of the school committee this evening is the December 2021 fiscal update for the general fund. As of December 2021, we are projecting a $101,000 surplus as of June 30th, 2022. To bring you some of the highlights on the revenue side, restricted state revenue is projected to be $79K over budget. The final state aid number was increased in July 2021 when the final enrollment snapshots were processed at RIDE. All regular salaries are projected to be $1.885 million under budget at this time. When netted with the employee turnover allowance of $1.028 million, this would put overall salaries $857K under budget. As a reminder, all vacant positions are encumbered, though they will be paid throughout the year, and the district has approximately $400,000 in ESSER funds budgeted for general fund salary reduction that has now been applied to the general fund, driving that surplus up. Substitute salary line has come in under budget, projected to be $138K under budget at this time. Or $361K under budget. I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong line. The district is having better success filling substitute positions, and the surplus on this line has decreased over the last few months. So we are doing a better job of filling the sub positions that we're looking at, we're having out in the district. I can see that by the surplus going down. After-school programs are currently projected to be 138K over budget. We did, as a reminder, we didn't budget anything. When we get to the close of the year, we're going to be taking that money and we're going to be offsetting it to ESSER 2 as we have money budgeted there. Medical expenses are currently 180K over budget. And again, we're still, I know we're into December on this, so we're kind of starting to get a picture of what the medical expenses are going to look like this year. But again, it only takes a few bad months of medical claiming to really blow that budget line out of the water. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on it. And again, be aware that we do have our medical surplus, medical pooling account, to fall back on. Additional speech therapists and contracted nursing services have been needed to begin the school year due to additional need. This is going to be something that's going to come out of ESSER 2 at this time, and we'll continue to monitor the services we need going forward. Behavioral interventionists have also been moved to ESSER 2 at this time. We've spent $324,000 so far this year on those. Another thing that we'll keep an eye on, and if need be, we can move to ESSER 2 based on how things wrap up in the general fund. And then finally, on to the general fund for technology, building improvement, and buses. We do have expenses moved off at this time to capital improvement accounts. We're also going to be moving expenses off from furniture and fixtures to ESSER 2 at this time. We are looking to make some changes to ESSER 3 as well. So hopefully ESSER 3 will be approved by the end of this month into March. And then we'll be looking to amend what we hopefully can add capital improvement wise to ESSER 3. That's going to be the next step here once our ESSER 3 is returned to us from the Rhode Island Department of Education. So if anyone has any questions at this time, I'll speak to anything you have.
The only comment, just to add to what you've been saying, is as we finalize the ESSER 2 monies, our operating fund will be cleaner and probably will show us somewhat of a higher surplus than we're showing right now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And one thing to, again, keep in mind, really with the salaries, is the salaries are fully budgeted out for the rest of the year. And we've had quite a pickup over the last few months as we do have some vacancies. So I would intend, I know we filled some positions, but it seems as we fill positions, we lose people. And it's kind of a process that we're fighting through right now. So I would expect to see more salary surplus in the coming months as we get closer to the end of the year. But also know that because of these vacancies that we have, we're out and we're contracting with additional services like the nursing, like the behavioral interventionists, like the SLPs, the speech language pathologists. So while we have the savings in the general fund, we're taking that savings and we're actually moving it to a purchase service as the students still need the services. And we're just having to reach out and get the services there. So.
Even with those reclasses or that reclass of those expenditures from salaries to services, we've still got about $1 million of expected salaries that would be encumbered that we're looking at that may not be encumbered, may not be spent.
Mm-hmm.
So that would add at the
Correct.
end of the year.
Yeah.
Right. Any other comments for Mr. Perrier? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the financial update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next, I'll ask Ms. Morrell to give us the special education update.
Chairman, in front of you is the special education update. I'd like to bring to your attention the occupational therapies multisensory approach to writing. It has become evident through our principal's walks in the elementary classes that many of our students in grades K to 2 need support in their hand strength and writing skills. Our district occupational therapists have developed a 6-week multisensory writing program to assist teachers in the buildings in building students' writing skills. They have blended Handwriting Without Tears writing curriculum and the Foundation's terminology. During the spring, each OT will be able to push into each kindergarten, first grade, and second grade classroom to review a 30-minute lesson for 6 weeks. Each one of these classrooms will also have a classroom set of materials for 5 students as a center. So when the OTs are not in the classrooms, the teachers can use that as a center for them to go to practice their writing skills and hand strength. This multi-sensory program will help support all the students in their handwriting strength and writing skills. Next are the special education numbers. This is the enrollment snapshot from February 22nd. The data points listed below are tracked in Skyward. Right now, there are a total of 1,478 students receiving special education services within our school from pre-K through 12. And this represents 26.99% of our total enrollment population. This is slightly higher than last month. Do you have any questions?
How are we doing with making sure all the children that need IEPs or all the children that need to be evaluated? Where do we stand on that?
We're pretty much up to date as to our reevaluations and our evaluations. Parents have been reaching out to myself and Mrs. Gerard if there are any concerns or if they have any questions, and we've been able to get them connected to their LEA of their buildings so that we can get the meeting started and make sure that the students are getting the supports that are needed.
Anyone else have any comments? Ms. Morel. I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the special education update. Do we have a second? Second by Vice Chair Burke. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we'll go into unfinished business. I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the amendments to the district's bullying policy for second passage. Do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Kepiscus. Any additional discussion on this item?
Yeah.
Ms. Costa,
So after the last meeting and just
please speak into your mic.
after the last meeting of us talking about it, I just have a quick question. So when I had requested for it to be rewritten a little bit and for us to get reports, I know that there was a conflict between confidentiality of the reports, but I don't understand why we can't receive a breakdown of there was this many incidences at this school for first, second, and third quarter of the school year. I don't understand why we can't get a breakdown for that. And we're not like ruining anybody's confidentiality. I'm not asking for names. I'm just asking for reports that were deemed bullying so we can compare first, second, third, and fourth quarter. So maybe we can make adjustments to see what better things we need to do to address that fact. Bullying is a big factor that I feel like is being overlooked, and not really happy with the rewritten of the policy, to be honest.
Dr. McGee?
So, Mrs. Costa, that's a really good question. So I'm receiving the reports from the principals. And so what I'm receiving two different things. I'm receiving the actual reports, which we've talked about, but I'm also receiving the number of reports versus the number of actual reports that are founded to be bullying. So that's what I can present to the committee, and I do have it by school. I have that as the principal sent it to myself and to Miss Blaze. We actually have a spreadsheet where we have it broken down with the number of reports and the number that have actually been, found to be actual. So that is
see like
yep.
how it's fluctuating. Like, okay, in the first quarter we had this many instances. Maybe it was because of. And now
Into the mic, please.
Sorry, and now in the second quarter we don't have as many instances. What was it that we did? And then in the third quarter it jumps back up again. What are the differences that we're doing that's making the differences between the reports?
I think we can schedule it during the course of the year so that you can see like for example, the first trimester versus the second trimester versus the third trimester at the elementary level, and then by quarter at the secondary level.
I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Chair Burke, yes, Mrs. Kepiscus, Mrs. Costa.
Next, we'll go into new business. The committee met in closed session this evening to discuss the recommendation of the superintendent not to renew the employment of certain probationary teachers. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Kepiscus, Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the superintendent's recommendation on masking. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee has before you the recommendation that I'm going to be making to you momentarily here. So I'm recommending that the wearing of masks for all students in grades pre-K through 12 and staff in the Woonsocket Education Department will be made optional beginning on Monday, March 7th, 2022. In addition to that, should the governor reverse his mask mandate for schools of students grades K through 12, then I would make a recommendation to the committee to reverse that. In addition to that, I want to talk a little bit about busing and transportation. While it is still federally mandated that students who are riding school buses wear their masks, that would continue. So again, to reiterate, my recommendation is that in grades pre-K through 12 in the Woonsocket Education Department, we make the wearing of masks optional. Should the governor reverse that, that would be my recommendation. And then number 3, that students would still be required to wear masks on buses, again, because that's beyond a school district decision.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. I just want to say that I agree with pro-choice. That's, from my perspective, I think I would have loved to see that months ago, but then we had an executive mandate from the governor. And in listening to him speak in the times that we've even been with him, I don't think he's going to reverse that mandate anytime soon. The numbers would have to be astronomical for him to do that. So I look at it just like many of you. I appreciate the comments that we heard this evening. We've all been frustrated with this. You appear tonight, the folks out here appeared and are against masking, but we have gotten, I know I've gotten several, I know some of the other committee members have gotten comments, texts, phone calls, wanting masks. So they're not here, but we get them. We're the school committee, so we are going to hear it all. But I believe at this point in time, I'm glad the governor got rid of the mandate, and I'm glad to be able to support the superintendent and pro-choice. If parents, teachers, staff, children want to wear masks, go right ahead. As far as I'm concerned, you don't want to wear a mask, don't. It's choice, as far as I'm concerned. I'll turn it over. Any other, Mrs. Costa?
I just want to clear the air. I do have 2 8-year-old twins that attend the Woonsocket school system, and I do view a lot of your points. And I just want to say from the beginning, I have been against children wearing masks. I just want to make sure that you guys do know that, because I do have small children, so I do understand what you guys are going through. I don't want anybody sitting in that audience to not understand what I am going through, because I understand what you guys go through as well.
Mrs. Kepiscus, please.
If you sent me an email, you got the exact same saga that I'm going to read to you now, but I'm going to read it anyway. It's been my position with regard to all COVID precautions that as a school committee, it's our responsibility to seek out professional guidance, as none of us are medical professionals. I view the use of masks in schools as a COVID precaution, for which the committee's decision should be based on medical information available to us rather than personal preferences or political arguments over rights and freedoms. As a practicing attorney, I am very well aware of each of our individual rights. But as a practicing probate and estate planning attorney, I am also painfully aware that this COVID pandemic has been, very sadly, good for my business. As an attorney who meets with many elderly and otherwise vulnerable clients every day, I wear my mask at all times when in the presence of others, have done so for the duration and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future if it makes my clients comfortable. As I had a fortuitous appointment with my endocrinologist this past week, I took advantage of the opportunity to discuss the mask mandate with him. Based upon our discussion of COVID generally, I came away with the following conclusions. 1, the COVID virus we are currently dealing with is very different from the COVID virus which was infecting and killing people in mass at the beginning of the pandemic. In strict Darwinian terms, the virus has progressed based on its necessary endgame to replicate without killing its host. As a result, the virus itself has become weakened from the original COVID we saw spreading across the world in waves in early 2020. Number 2, the virus is called COVID-19 for a reason. The 19 signifies that this is not the first COVID virus to be found present in our world, nor the most contagious. Consider the common cold, which is also a COVID virus as well, but by far it has been one of the most deadly. Number 3, the virus is far less dangerous to those of us who are vaccinated and boosted. The doctor with whom I spoke has admitted literally hundreds of patients infected with COVID, watching many die before a vaccine was available. While the vaccine may not be effective in the long term, we've all been hearing that, it is the best that science has to offer, and I strongly recommend that, as I always have all along, that those who can should consider being vaccinated and boosted. I am. I say this realizing that there is much opposition to the available vaccine. This vaccine is truly a marvel of modern science, wherein the virologists and the medical community were able to replicate this particular. I listen to you respectfully. I'm asking you to do the same.
There should be no comments from the public, please. Mrs. Kapiskas, please continue.
Thank you. This vaccine is truly a marvel of modern science, wherein the virologists of the medical community were able to replicate this particular variant of COVID virus without the ability to replicate. Essentially, a scientifically created dead viral cell which can send our bodies into superdrive in order for our bodies to replicate the antibodies we need to fight the virus while it actually being exposed to the live virus, which would have the ability to replicate. Many vaccines use the same methodology, for example, chickenpox, and have for years, but the speed at which they were able to create this non-replicative virus for use in a vaccine is a modern miracle. As with any vaccine, there will be in our breakthrough cases, particularly for those whose bodies are unable to produce sufficient antibodies, like me. However, the vaccine is still the best that science can offer us at this time. Like the flu vaccine, which changes annually based on the strain of the flu, the medical community anticipates will propagate during the winter months. This vaccine offers protection against the strains of variants of COVID most prevalent in our community at the time. As the virus continues to mutate, as it is its job as a virus to mutate, so it can survive against antibodies we create to kill it. Boosters for these new variants will continue to be required and should not be considered a sign that science has failed us in some way, or that there is no such thing as COVID. Too many have lost family members, in my case, many clients, to COVID, for any reasonable person to truly believe that at this point. As an ancillary to this, my doctor advised me that during the most recent post-holiday wave of cases, not one of his patients who was vaccinated ended up hospitalized, while as a corollary, all of his unvaccinated patients who were hospitalized did not survive. He further assured me that those deaths were extremely painful to these patients, many of whom expressed their regret about failing to get vaccinated. In his considered medical opinion, while we continue to wear a mask he will continue to wear a mask in his office, both pursuant to state mandate as well as his own concerns after having been twice infected himself. Vaccination offers the best protection from the virus and is far more effective than any mask. After careful consideration and discussion with this physician, among other physicians, I would support a choice policy with regard to the ongoing use of masks in our school. In so saying, I also recognize from my own experience over the past 2 years that many who are opposed to the wearing of masks are also opposed to vaccinations, either in general or as to this COVID vaccine and its boosters in particular. I must say this, knowing that taking this choice position has given me great pause. However, I do so cautiously, as there remain many students and staff in our schools who are particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. Those with disabilities, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, cancer, advanced stage, obesity, etc. Some of them for whom vaccination is not recommended. because their antibodies being produced in mass quantities will stress their bodies as to make them far sicker than they were at the start. We have many very experienced teachers and staff in our schools whose ages place them at risk. We have many students with special needs, both in general and special education classrooms, whose medical conditions place them at particular risk. If the decision is made to make masks optional after March 4th, I hope and trust that the parents and guardians of our district will do their best to instruct their children, our students, to be considerate of the particular needs of those most vulnerable among us by directing them not to comment on others who are wearing masks based on their own choices, and not to comment on those who are vaccinated based on their own choices. We each have the right to make our own choice, considering our own research and our own science. But I also remind and caution everybody, for those who are Star Trek fans, you will understand, COVID has presented us with a real example of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And in conclusion, I just want to raise two things that I haven't written, one of whom I'm going to direct at Dr. McGee, which is that I hope that the school is prepared to address any bullying which may occur as a result of our decision, should we decide to favor choice tonight, for those students and staff who do select to wear masks. They should not be bullied or disrespected or treated as less than because of their choice as well. And the second, for those who are saying that there should have been defiance of the governor's state mandate, I understand where you're coming from. You have a strong position, but I also ask you to consider the corollary to that. In Florida, where there was a mandate of no masks, in the one school district that defied that, Miami-Dade, they are now being threatened with the loss of $72 million in educational funds because they directed their students to wear masks. Do you not think the corollary would have occurred here in Rhode Island? If a district had defied the state mandate, we would have been denied our educational funding as well. That would have had a tremendous deficit on all of our students and all of our schools. And with that, I conclude by saying at this point, the bottom line is I support choice.
Vice Chair Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I shall be brief. Recently, I read an article in the Jesuit magazine, America, and there was a statement that really struck to me. And the statement was that our push today to normalcy is more a product of exhaustion rather than of progress. And I say that thinking in mind, too, that I am frustrated that in the city of Woonsocket, the adult population of vaccines is still the second lowest in the state. I'm also frustrated that the vaccine rate for our students from K to 12 is also the lowest in the state. "68 years ago on this day, the Salt polio vaccine was rolled out, and it was rolled out into the city of Pittsburgh, where 5,000 school children lined up to receive the vaccine. You all know we have eradicated polio in the United States because of the vaccine." Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could you please maintain some order?
Can we ask you to stop reacting? We've got a, we're not children. We ask for decorum in our meetings. Now, I'll ask for a vote to approve the superintendent's recommendation.
I second.
You have something else?
I'm all done. I'm all done.
I'll ask for the vote. Dr. McGee, to approve your recommendation.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
So passed. Next, we'll have a discussion on the proposed revisions to secondary regulations, graduation requirements, And I'll ask Mrs. Kepiscus to lead that discussion.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chair. And sadly, I'm seeing a lot of the parents leave, and I would think that they would want to hear about this since it will impact their students, but perhaps they don't care. Starting with the class of 2026, which is the incoming ninth graders, the class that will come in this September, there's been a significant change to the graduation requirements at this proposed a significant change to the graduation requirements, which will require 4 English language arts credits, 4 math credits, 3 of which must be Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, 3 credits in science, including 2 lab sciences, 3 credits in history and social studies, 2 credits in a world language, and they must be in the same world language, 1 credit of college prep coursework, and an additional 3 credits presumed to include arts, computer science, PE, and health. Every student shall be required to attempt this credit sequence. However, students with special needs, MLL students, students who are at risk to begin with, and are at risk of failing one of these credits, there's no provision made except for students with IEPs. With students with IEPs, the student must still attempt to take the class. And if they are struggling based upon a manifestation of their disability, a term generally reserved for punishment, discipline for special needs students, if that determination is made, the school may place the student in a RIDE-approved readiness pathway to substitute the above credits with the parent's approval. And this is concerning particularly to people who have children with special needs, because it was going to leave the decision of whether or not your child will be able to divert from these credits to an IEP team. An IEP team who is not charged under the IDEA, which is the law that governs special education, with making those decisions. We have many students who don't have IEPs but are at risk and still would likely not be able to meet these requirements, and as a result would not be able to graduate. In addition to those classes, starting with the class of 2026, incoming ninth grade, they must also have a class in civics and a class in computer science. With the class of 2024, which is our grade 10 moving into grade 11, they're required to have a class in financial literacy. On top of those, I think, onerous credit requirements for some students in urban districts, on top of that, they are adding a requirement that each graduating senior must complete one of the following: complete a FAFSA application, or complete it and submit a state student aid application, or a parent may certify a waiver if he or she refuses to complete the application. And if the graduating senior cannot complete it due to extenuating circumstances, the school may apply to the commissioner for a waiver. Those are all, in case you don't know, financial disclosure forms where students are applying for financial aid to pay for a 4-year college. Not every student is going to a 4-year college, yet these requirements are assuming they all are. They're assuming no one's going into the trades. They're assuming no one's going to work after graduation. And with regard to the FAFSA and student aid applications, if you've never done one, they're onerous to begin with. And to make that a graduation requirement seems to me to be ill-advised and makes no logical sense in light of everything else they are trying to do. In particular, I'm concerned about students who are on alternate assessment in special education, because there is no provision for them to be able to get a diploma under these statewide requirements. And it's my opinion that what they're trying to do is set up what is in New York, a Regents diploma versus a district diploma. Certain students will get a Regents diploma if they meet these requirements, and certain students who can't, not because they choose not to, but can't meet these requirements, will be denied a diploma, which will make them unemployable. Seems to me the end result is for everybody to be able to find a job and be self-sufficient. So these are not, I do not think these are good changes. I bring them to everyone's attention just for discussion purposes, so you can keep your eyes and your ears open as parents, as citizens, and as educators, if we have any listening, to make your voice heard, to oppose these particular requirements, because they are not best serving our students in particular, or any students in any urban districts in particular. Yes, we need to hold the standards high, but we can't make them impossible of our graduate students will not graduate, and they will not be able to find employment in most cases in today's world without at least that diploma. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. I can tell you that the Rhode Island Association of School Committees and the chairs of the school committees are dealing with this issue, because I haven't heard anyone agree with these changes for the reasons that you eloquently stated. It seems to me it places an unreasonable burden on the families, the students, and just trying to accomplish to take all these courses. I don't know how that's going to be done. Frankly, I don't care what program. I mean, you only can fit so much schoolwork in a year, and how that's going to work, I have no idea. But in terms of filling out the financial application, I agree with you. That doesn't make any sense to me that this should be a requirement for graduation. Dr. McGee, is the Association of Superintendents dealing with this issue?
So, yes, there has been a letter that's been sent with respect to some, displeasure to some of the draft regulations. In addition to the Superintendents Association, the Principals Association as well as
Dealing with us.
wait my turn. I just had a few comments, but I just wanted to give the rest of the committee members an opportunity to speak.
I have a question.
Mrs. Costa, please.
So I'm assuming that with all of that being crammed in, they're not offering any kind of help to students that are not reaching that level.
They are mandating that there are certain testing to be done through the process to make sure students are tracking towards proficiency. They are offering no supports with regard to how that tracking is going on, nor are they offering any financials to assist us in giving the students the extra help that they will need to meet these new standards. That's clear. It's concerning. It's very concerning. And I do want to say, just to clarify, as Mr. Burke just mentioned, these are proposed. These have not passed yet. They're coming out for public comment. I'm told they should be coming out in the Commissioner's Field memo in March next month. So that's what we need to watch out for, so we can all publicly comment as to our feelings. And to piggyback on your question, Mr. Chair, with regard to the superintendents, the Rhode Island Special Education Advisory Council is also sending a letter when it's time for public comment, and we will also be addressing publicly with regard to public comment. We'll be speaking out against these regulations.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Chairman,
Vice Burke.
just briefly, here I am in my 7th year, I believe, on the school committee here in Woonsocket, and I can count more than on one hand how many times the state of Rhode Island keeps changing graduation requirements. I don't always understand it. Maybe they're always trying to find a better way, but it is frustrating that this keeps happening.
The changes aren't to make them easier. They seem to get more difficult, especially this set of proposed changes. This really puts a burden on the students and their families to get this done.
And the districts.
And the districts, of course. Dr. McGee. Mrs. Costa, do you have any?
I said I didn't think they would have supports. I mean, it's kind of crazy they would do something like this and then not have supports in place to be able to help those that are underperforming in the first place, let alone the ones that can, but it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for them as well.
Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would agree with Mrs. Kepiscus. It is going to make it very challenging for students with IEPs, especially students who are on the alternate assessment. As she stated, there is no diploma for students. There would be no proposed diploma for students that are on the alternate assessment. In addition to students with IEPs, what this is going to do, because of the number of potential classes that students would need to take, for example, one part of the proposal is that students would need to graduate with 2 credits of a foreign language, which means right now students don't have to graduate with 2 foreign language credits, I should say. So what this is going to do is it's going to make it more challenging for students to fit these classes into their schedule, which will make it a little bit more challenging for students that are at our career center. So again, it goes beyond, the challenges for students with IEPs. It's going to go to students who would start their high school career or even when they're in middle school, because when students are here in our middle schools, we're already talking to them about the possibilities that they can, be exposed to at the career center. This is going to really make them have to make a decision when they get to Woonsocket High School. So I'm hopeful that these key parts of the draft are not approved by the regents and by RIDE, but we'll wait and see. But there are organizations that have come out against these. So I'm hopeful that those different organizations will be successful.
Dr. McGee.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Kapiskas.
I just want to explain, the only reason I put this on the agenda, that I asked it be put onto the agenda, was to bring it to everyone's attention.
Right.
So it didn't slip through the cracks, get passed without everyone knowing about it. And I wanted parents in particular to know. If you want to be vocal about issues, this is a good one to be vocal about as well. This is an important one. Maybe you have children who are in elementary school now, and I can pretty much guarantee you the requirements are probably going to change by the time your kids get to high school.
Probably more than once.
Probably, but you want to at least keep an eye on this, because this could have slipped by without anybody knowing about it if people weren't paying attention. And it is a significant change. And in particular, I sat on one of the committees that was developing blueprints for special ed students. I wasn't on the MLL students, but a reimagining high school committee, which was designed to contribute to all this. All of our recommendations were ignored in the development of these requirements.
You.
Yeah, one more question.
Mrs. Costa.
Is there anything we can do as a committee to kick back that, or is that overall?
Can we not have a resolution prepared?
I believe you could do a resolution. You could also prepare a letter to the commission.
I would
opposing the imposition of the mandates.
I would recommend that our attorneys prepare such a letter so that we could all sign it and send it out. I'd like to see that by the next meeting. Is that too late?
It hasn't made the field memo yet, to the best of my knowledge, so it's not open for public comment yet. There'll be at least 30 days for public comments. That would be sufficient. But there's actually talk, it will probably be longer, maybe 45 to 60 on these requirements.
Can I have a letter prepared so that we could review it and then we could all sign it? Next, last item on the agenda is a discussion of adding a student representative on the school committee pending bylaw amendments. Should I turn it over to you, Mrs. Kapiskas, and Vice Chair Burke?
Sure. I had seen.
You're on a roll, so you might as well.
I have a lot to say tonight. I'll try to keep this brief. Sorry.
I think she should be our official speaker.
I think I need a drink of water or something stronger. But anyway, in particular, I wanted to raise an issue about whether or not we want to contemplate having a student representative on the school committee. Contrary to what a lot of people might think, we're not allowed to sit and talk to each other before a meeting to discuss whether or not we want to do any of these things. We submit items to the agenda. We see those items when the agenda is posted to us for approval. We don't discuss them. We're not allowed. That's a violation of the open meetings law. We can't discuss them unless we discuss them in a public forum. I saw an article out of Westerly where the superintendent of schools there, who used to be in this district, Mark Garso, and his student representative to the school committee write an article in the local paper that he normally writes. He gave them the article for the month. And I reached out to him and said, what is this student representative to the school committee? I don't know what this is about. So he responded back to me. He remembered me because I was a difficult parent. And he responded back to me and explained to me what the program was. And what they do in Westerly is essentially the school committee allows a student representative to sit with the school committee at meetings and comment but not vote. The intent is to create a student voice in the school committee so that the students who are directly involved will have the right to say something at meetings. He said they've done it for 3 years. 2 years it didn't work very well. This particular representative is working out. I asked him what the process was, and in Westerly, the process is that interested students submit an application to the principal, who vets them, and then the principal selects the student who will act as the representative. Alternately, it could be done by vote of the student body, but I have some concerns about that because we don't really want it to be a popularity contest. We would want it to be a student who could well represent the views of the school, so perhaps a class officer or something like that. And when I happened to say something about that I'd spoken to Dr. Garso, Mr. Burke said he'd made that recommendation a few years ago before my time on the school committee. So I asked him if it was okay to add his name as sponsoring this discussion so that he could advise what he was thinking. And I turn it over to you, Mr. Burke.
At my previous high school, we did have a group of students. In fact, there were three students who attended school committee meetings. They did not have a vote. At our school, they were voted by their senior class to serve as student committee representatives. And they used to meet with one of the teachers and talk about what they could present every school committee meeting to the school committee and the community. And the kids did a great job. So I think it's something that really could work. As Mrs. Kapiskis mentioned, I did bring up this idea a few years ago. There was a group of students that kept coming to school committee meetings. They were part of an organization in the high school, and they were interested in coming to these school committee meetings. And I began a discussion with one of them, and I raised this point with her that wouldn't it be a good idea that maybe you or someone in your group or someone that's interested, would be part of reporting to the school committee, and to use the phrase that Mrs. Kapiskis did, that you could be the voice of the students, the voice of the high school to the school committee. So I think it's a great idea. Obviously, we have to find out if there's any interest among the students. Obviously, I think the students should somehow maybe work with their administration to be chosen. And we could try it as a pilot program for a while. But from my past experience, it worked. I saw a possibility a few years ago, and it just didn't come to fruition. So I was kind of disappointed then. But I think I'm glad that Mrs. Kapiskis has raised it again, because I think it'd be something worthwhile.
Chime in on this and just add to what I've heard. I assume, but maybe our attorneys can check. I want to make sure there is no violation of the general laws, that this is allowed. But I think the way this could work well is we have subcommittee reports. Why couldn't we have an agenda item every meeting where it would be a report or a report from the schools? So it would be part of our existing agenda as an item, like we have recognitions and announcements, we have the superintendent's report, but we could have a section on the agenda that deals with the school representative making a presentation or a discussion with the school committee. That's how I would see this working very well. I don't know what anybody else thinks. Mrs. Costa?
Just a quick question. So,
into the mic, because
just a quick comment. So with that student body, I think it would also be a good idea and beneficial, because I think prior, and correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to me joining the school committee, I don't think anybody had any children in the school committee.
I did.
You did. Okay.
Other people have too.
yes. And if it's not students, grandchildren who are within the system.
Okay.
I had representation.
I just think it would be a good idea to have somebody that deals with a school on kind of like a daily basis. Would be great to have somebody's input, and I think a student would be best fit for that position, to be honest.
Kapiskis.
If I may, I would love to have more parents who have children in the district sit on the school committee. I've always said that.
It would be awesome.
We solicited I've always said this school committee should represent our student body. Look at us. We don't. We're not particularly diverse. I've said that all along. I know I'm a little bit off agenda. Don't kill me, Caroline. But I've said that all along, that we should have a more diverse school committee. And when we ran for our first terms, we all tried. Nobody was interested. If parents are interested, they need to do that. They need to run. If you want to be heard, you want to have a voice here, you need to do that. But I also think that our students have a right to have a voice here. And I understand your point, Mr. Chair, with a line item on the agenda. But I was thinking more that I would prefer to have student voice on each and every item on the agenda. They should have a voice on all of those. They may not have anything to say. There are things that come up on our agenda on occasion that I don't have anything to say about. Financial usually, because I don't understand a whole lot of it. But I think that my point is I would prefer them sit on the dais. And I think that the students involved, the students they're representing, would feel more represented if the student actually had a seat at the table. Non-voting, because we can't do that, but a seat at the table.
The one issue I have with that is that we limit public comment. Somebody comes to the podium, they have so many minutes and they leave. We're talking about somebody who's not elected to the school committee to sit permanently among the school committee to address every single issue. I don't know how that plays out with the community, even with us. So that's the reason I say we can put them on the agenda, or we can figure out how we do that. I mean, this is just, we haven't really, like you said, we don't have an opportunity to speak about things amongst ourselves because it's got to be done here in public. So we're trying to do that now. But that's the issue I have, is public comment versus someone who's not elected to the committee, who sits permanently on the committee to address every single item. I'm not saying I don't welcome the comments, but maybe there's a way to do that other than what I'm suggesting. That's just my initial thoughts on this. Dr. McGee, what do you think?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea of having a representative from the high school. I know that, in speaking with Mr. Gio, there are, you've got your traditional student council, you've got, your student leadership. There's been a Novin Voice group of students that have been instrumental in communicating with the high school administration, the school improvement team as well, around, making improvements specific to the high school. I think it would be a good opportunity to really promote civics in our schools and specifically in our high school. I don't see it going lower than the high school. I just think that, if there were a student,
I think the high school.
Right.
I think if there were a high school student who could be a part of, if nothing else, maybe obviously not a voting member of the school committee, that wouldn't be possible. But I think it would be nice to hear input and feedback from a student. And as you said, Mrs. Kapiskis, it wouldn't necessarily be every single agenda item. As you said, sometimes members of the committee refrain from commenting on certain agenda items. That's just the nature of the business. But I think there are certainly some areas where I think it would be helpful to get input and feedback from a representative from the high school who, however that student is chosen, could be, to be determined. But I think it's definitely worth looking
We should pursue it.
further into, what they're doing in Westerly, so maybe we can replicate something like that here in Woonsocket.
And I believe I do actually have the application from Westerly. Dr. Garso, was kind enough to share it with me. And I believe there's another district, I don't remember if it was you who told me, Caroline, that there's another district that also has a student rep, Barrington. So we were thinking what we would like to do is at least look at whatever they do. And I can reach out to Barrington if you'd like me to. And unless you have information on Barrington, I don't know if your firm represents them. But the thought is, why I wanted to mention it now for discussion is we're looking at the bylaws, and the bylaws will be coming before policy at our next meeting. And this is not something we need a policy for, but we think it rightfully belongs in the bylaws. It should describe exactly what this position is, that it's non-voting, it's a student rep, hopefully the procedure by which they're selected. So my suggestion is to you, sorry, Caroline, but if you have ideas other than what we've discussed here as to how that student is selected, share them with Caroline. I would say share them with me, but that violates the OMA. So you'd have to share them with Caroline, excuse me, and then she could report back to us what her thoughts and recommendations are when the policy committee next meets. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just have
Just
one
quickly-
question.
Vice Chair Burke?
Once again, at my school, the students made a report. They did not discuss every agenda item. They did make a report to the school committee, which they had prepared working together. But I also think it's also not only allowing to have a voice of a student at the school committee, but that student can bring the voice of the school committee back to the schools. And obviously, to me, we're serving the needs of the students, so obviously they could hear from us, from a
Right
student
there.
rep.
Mrs. Costa, you had something.
I just want to know, where are they going to fit?
We'll figure that out.
I'm only
We'll fit.
playing. I was
There's room. There's room right there.
My chair's in the back.
We're good.
All right, yeah, we'll move over.
We'll figure it out. Anyone else on this topic? Then I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:33 PM. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Adjourned.